Hello everybody, my name is Tim Utz. I'm the host of CCCR-Education. We're bringing this program to you today to share with you the issues of the Constitution and the Republic that we have in the United States of America. And today with me I have a guest. His name is Tim Tingelstad. Hello Tim, nice to see you.
Thanks Tim for having me.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure. I've been wanting to do this for quite a while. Want to introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about your family, your work, and a little bit about your political aspirations that you've had.
Right. Well, I live in Bemidji, Minnesota. Grew up in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, and lived here all my life. I am a magistrate for the 9th Judicial District.
What is a magistrate? Can you explain that to us?
It's a fancy term for a family law judge. So I sit on the district court bench, but I'm very limited in the scope of the hearings that I conduct. I'm only in family law, and my hearings have to do with family law issues.
Okay.
And so I've been doing that for over 12 years. Prior to that, I was an assistant county attorney. And prior to that, or actually between that and being a magistrate, I was in general practice of law in Bemidji.
How did you become a magistrate? Is that appointed? Did you run for office or something? Or?
Well, actually, when I first started doing what I'm doing, it was my position was called administrative law judge. And so I was an administrative law judge, and that was not an elected position. It was just a hired position. And then the whole forum changed over into the judicial branch. They took it out of the executive branch and put it in the judicial branch because the Constitution, which we're going to talk about today, really requires judges in family law to be elected or accountable to elected judges. So accountable to the people is the bottom line. And so we needed to move the whole system into the judicial branch, and that's when I became a magistrate rather than an administrative law judge. But what I did and continue to do is the same. I hear family law cases.
Why did it take us so long when the Constitution was written in 1857? Why did it take so long to figure this out? I'm just curious that you bring this up.
Well, like any time, for a court to decide an issue, there has to be a case brought before it. You don't just call the court up and say, well, is this constitutional? There has to be a case in front of it. And this was a case that somebody challenged the fact that, well, why is an administrative law judge who's not a part of the judicial branch, who's not an elected official, why are they deciding my family law issues? And took it all the way to the state Supreme Court, and the state Supreme Court said, you're right. We've got this system, in this administrative law judge system is unconstitutional. We have to have it within the judicial branch. And then because it was a specialized position, they called it a magistrate rather than a district court judge position. So I'm a magistrate for the 9th Judicial District.
So you're telling me that the system actually worked in this case where a citizen or a group of people got together and said this is wrong and brought it to the courts to say this is unconstitutional, needs to be changed?
Yeah,
well,
it did work. You're right.
Oh, now, could you tell us a little bit about your education? Did you go to Dunwoody and learn about being a plumber, or how did you get involved, and where did you go to school at?
I did my undergraduate in Concordia College in Moorhead. I went to law school my first year in William Mitchell in St. Paul. I then transferred up to the University of North Dakota after my first year, basically because it was 1/5 the cost. I didn't want to come out with any more loans than I needed to. And went up to UND, finished my 2 years, and got my Juris Doctorate from the University of North Dakota Law School. And then went right into actually I was a law clerk the first year out of law school, and then went into my private practice county attorney, and then became the magistrate that I am today. You also asked generally, as far as politically, I have run for the Minnesota State Supreme Court 3 times. I felt called to do that and do what we're doing here today, educate the people on the issues of judicial elections and bring the judicial system, the court system, back in line with the original intent of the founders of this state, make the judicial branch accountable to the people again. And so that's the kind of issue that I love to come and talk to people about.
So Tim, what you're telling me now is you know what you're talking about. And that's one reason I have you here today, is because I don't want a plumber telling me how this works. I want somebody who understands the Constitution and how our country got started. So could you tell us a little bit about the judicial system in America that started in 1791, I believe is when the first Supreme Court was set up, but also the judicial process within the states too. So could you just give us a little history of how it's developed over the 200 and some years?
Well, it's important, and I want to respond to your initial statement there too. You want somebody that understands it. I hope that we are in a nation and a state where we don't trust lawyers and judges as the only ones who understand the Constitution. You know, I do have a law degree. You know, there wasn't that long ago when I first started. I think right after I graduated from law school in '85, I was up in the 9th District. There was still a judge up there who was not a lawyer. You didn't have to be a lawyer, and still today, technically don't have to be a lawyer. The Minnesota Constitution says to be qualified to be a judge, you have to be learned in the law. Okay, it doesn't say you have to have a law degree,
okay. All right.
but
All right.
That has been interpreted, and I believe it's actually the court system has interpreted that as being now, in order to be learned in law, you must have a law degree.
That almost sounds self-serving to me.
Well, and I'm sure there are some people that, I know there are people that disagree that the Constitution language was misinterpreted, that you really shouldn't have to be a lawyer to be a judge. And but you do have to know the law, and if you don't go to law school, then you'd have to have learned it on your own. But there are some people that make a good argument that if I can go and pass the bar examination and show my knowledge of the law, why should I have to have that law degree behind my name? Right now, though, you know, you have to basically, in order to be a judge, to be appointed or elected, you're going to probably have to have a law degree to do that in the state of Minnesota, practically speaking. And so the history, a little bit of history, because it's very important for people. They don't understand the judicial branch. Of the three branches of government, the executive, the legislative, and the judicial, the one that I think is least understood is the judicial branch. We have three branches of government, all three of those branches underneath the people. And the way that the people hold all three branches accountable is through meaningful judicial elections. And I spent from last spring through the election cycle trying to educate people on the importance of having meaningful judicial elections. During that process, I would be telling people, if we don't wake up and understand that we have the constitutional right to choose our judges through meaningful elections, we're going to lose them. And you know, that's for another show probably. But the issue at stake is, if we don't understand our right, we'll lose it, because there are those who want to take that right away. The Minnesota Constitution for the last 150 plus years has given us, we the people of the state of Minnesota, the right to elect every man or woman who sits on every district court, appellate court, or Supreme Court bench. We have that right, and it's never been changed. We have that right.
But is not there some attempts to eliminate some of those processes?
There is. The problem is, it's very difficult for people to understand, because the way the Constitution is right now is fine. We have the right to elect judges. But because since 1973, or in the 70s, the judicial branch started regulating and putting requirements and restrictions on judicial campaigns. They were telling judicial candidates what they can say or what they can't say. They were telling judicial candidates basically who they could speak to. Those kind of restrictions on judicial campaigns basically took our right away without amending the Constitution. Just writing some rules took away our right to meaningful judicial elections. Most people today realize, Tim, that, you know, I hate to go to the ballot box and vote for judges because I don't know anything about who I'm voting for. Well, that's by design. That's not by accident.
So how did this process happen? I mean, we were talking about, I want to start back in 1791, right. But is this part of the breakdown of the court system and the judicial system in America, or in our state?
Well, in our state, you're right. So we've always had for 150 years the right to elect judges, but and at one point in time we had partisan judicial elections. Right now, when you run for office, judicial office or judicial election, you don't run as a Democrat or a Republican. You just run.
But you were in the past able to, or you can't do it now, or is it an unwritten rule?
It's a nonpartisan elections in Minnesota. Some states have partisan judicial elections, okay, where you run as a Republican or a Democrat. The nice thing about that, and those who are in those states say that they believe that their people are the most educated people on judicial elections, because political parties really are about educating people, and without them, I can speak from experience, 3 statewide campaigns, without a political party helping educate the people, it's pretty difficult to even get to the people to educate them on these real important issues.